As global trade has flourished in recent decades, so have trade disputes. Although every company might like to do business without encountering disputes with their counterparty, it is not always possible to avoid situations where the importer and the exporter disagree. A trade dispute can refer to a wide variety of situations, from a full-scale customs war or trade war to a less intense conflict about the alleged violation of a trade agreement, custom, or rule by one of a country's trading partners. International trade disputes often involve allegations of dumping or abusive national subsidy practices. Disputes can also result in the importer delaying or defaulting on the payment, or the exporter violating the contractual terms of delivery. When these terms of contract are broken, a breach of contract occurs. When the defaults are caused by intentional activities, the breaching party shall assume compensation liability. For instance, the seller defaults when he fails to make delivery according to shipment date stated in the contract, or delivers the goods that does not conform with the contract in respect of quality, specifications, quantity, and packing, etc., or presents shipping documents that are incomplete and inadequate. On the other hand, the buyer defaults when he fails to open the relevant LC according to the stipulated period, or wrongly refuses to accept the goods, or fails to dispatch the vessel according to the stipulations of the FOB contract. Both parties may be responsible by misunderstanding or miscomprehension of the contract that is not clearly stipulated, or by breach of the contract by both parties. Two main types of disputes can occur between parties engaged in international trade. Financial disputes arise when counterparties disagree on the amount of understanding amongst themselves. Contractual disputes arise when the counterparties disobey signed contractual agreements. If one party breaks the contract and makes the other party unable to obtain the main profit, then this is called material breach. In this case, the injured party has the right to cancel the contract. Meanwhile, he may also ask for compensation for losses. If one party breaks the contract, but the case is not so serious and the other party will not lose any main profit, this is called minor breach. In this case, the injured party cannot cancel the contract. However, he may ask for compensation for losses. In the CISG, these two undertakes are termed fundamental breach and non-fundamental breach. When the defaults are caused by some events unforeseeable, external to the parties of the contract, and unavoidable, the breach party will be exempt from fulfilling its obligation in the contract. These events or circumstances beyond the control of the parties are known as force majeure. Force majeure translates literally from French as superior force or greater force. It is a civil law concept and equivalent counterpart of impracticability or frustration in contracts under common law. In business circles, force majeure describes those uncontrollable events that are not the fault of any party and that make it difficult or impossible to carry out normal business. This is a world that seems more unpredictable than ever. Whether disruption of services and goods occurs as a result of terrorist attacks, such as those on the World Trade Center on 9/11, or are the result of increasingly severe weather events such as earthquakes, tsunamis, hurricanes, companies must establish contingencies to deal with these issues when negotiating contracts, and insert force majeure clauses into the contracts to absolve themselves from liability in the event they cannot fulfill the terms of the contract for reasons beyond their control. That is where a force majeure clause comes in. Force majeure is related to the concept of an act of God or an act of man. Act of God refers to the natural disasters such as flood, fire, storm, earthquake, heavy snow, tsunami, hurricane, etc. Act of man indicates the human actions or social disturbances such as war, strikes, lockouts, crime, sanctions, blockage, civil commotions, riot, revolution, armed conflict, plague, etc. The COVID-19 pandemic represents a classic example of a force majeure event. It is a force majeure event for many individuals and companies. Accordingly, many people and the corporate entities are seeking relief from contractual agreements they previously entered into before the COVID-19 pandemic. Force majeure contract clauses effectively triggered by the pandemic are likely to happen in circumstances where the lockdown and the quarantine requirements imposed by the government make it impossible for one or both parties to fulfill their contractual obligations. If you are notified that a contract has been postponed or cancelled due to COVID-19, then you should check your contract for a force majeure clause. The consequences of force majeure clauses vary depending upon how they are worded, however. Such consequences may include termination of the contract or postponement of a party's obligations or commitments. In cases of a natural disaster or other events that have made it impossible to fulfill the contract can be terminated. In cases of events, for example, transportation stoppage caused by an earthquake, that will only delay the fulfillment of a contract. The contract can be postponed but not terminated, since it is still possible for the seller to carry out his contract obligations. Generally speaking, for events to constitute force majeure, they must be unforeseeable, external to the parties of the contract, and unavoidable. These concepts, however, are defined and applied differently depending on the jurisdiction. As discussed above, force majeure is a civil law concept that is not a general concept with a standard meaning under common law. But the doctrine of force majeure serves a similar purpose in both common law and civil law jurisdictions, to provide an excuse for non-performance or deficient performance when a particular type of event occurs. Of course, even within the two legal traditions, there are significant differences in how the law of force majeure has evolved and is applied. This is what we should pay attention to. As well as the features, the event happens after the contract is signed and is not due to the negligence of the buyer or the seller. Neither the buyer nor the seller can control the situation. It may only take one catastrophic event to destroy all the hard work you've put in to make your business a success. Taking the precaution of including a force majeure clause in every contract you negotiate is a great bit of insurance against the unforeseen circumstances. All right, so much for today. See you later.